So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. So guys, we've obviously had Tyson Fury fight today, and he knocked out Dillian White in brutal fashion, and it was quite one-sided. He dominated the action, he dominated the fight, and it was a great performance. I have to give him a lot of credit for it, because he totally neutralized White and made it quite easy pickings in the end. Really, it wasn't really much of a contest. But you know what, pros fight, you see a lot of comments and you see a lot of people giving their opinions, and it really irritates me sometimes. People get carried away. Tyson Fury is a great heavyweight, and he's probably the greatest heavyweight of this generation. But when people start talking about, he's better than Ali and Ali wouldn't get near him, that starts to irritate me and frustrate me and kind of pee me off a little bit, because look, Tyson Fury is a great fighter. There's no doubt about it. He's a very, very good fighter. He's big, he's strong. He's now added, he can punch a little bit to his game. But let's not get carried away. He just knocked out Dillian White. He didn't knock out George Foreman. He knocked out Dillian White, right? And he's knocked out Deontay Wilder, and he beat Vladimir Klitschko, right? Let's keep that in perspective. A 40-year-old Vladimir Klitschko. Not taking anything away from Fury, but then when people start comparing him to Ali, I think it's a bit absurd and a bit of blasphemy, really. What people don't understand is that Ali fought in an era where the heavyweights were unbelievable. Like, we're talking about probably, they call it the golden age of heavyweight boxing. If you look at Ali's resume, the reason why people rate Ali as the greatest heavyweight of all time is because of the fact that the level of competition he had to face in that era. I think it's quite fair to say the heavyweight division of today is nowhere near in comparison. I don't want to hear, well, time has moved on and the fighters get better. That's rubbish. Because if Ali had fought in this era, Ali would have taken advantage of the resources and been as good, if not better, by taking use of these resources. Let me tell you something, right? If we were to do a category, right, of who's got the best chin, of who's got the fastest hands, of who's got the best IQ, right? Who's got the best footwork, Ali would probably make top 5 or top 10 in every department. Like, for example, there's fighters like Deontay Wilder. He might make top 10 in terms of power. Amir Khan, for example, he might make top 5 or top 10 in terms of hand speed, right? But very few fighters have it all. Ali had it all. He had a great chin. He had a better chin than Fury. He had quicker hands than Fury. He had better footwork than Fury. He was better than Fury in every department. And let's not forget, Ali knocked out George Foreman in his prime. I don't see Tyson Fury got a win like that on his resume, where he knocked out, like, people thought George Foreman would kill Ali. People were worried for Muhammad Ali's health when he fought George Foreman. That's how much of a risk that fight was, and that's how dangerous that fight was at the time. So when people make absurd statements that Ali wouldn't even get near Tyson, and people say, well, Tyson Fury's so much bigger than Ali, 6'9", that don't mean anything. It only means something when two guys are on the same level. Fury is not on the same level as Ali. Ali's skill set is on another level to Tyson Fury. If a guy is on your level and he's much bigger than you, yeah, then I'd agree. But Tyson Fury isn't on the same level. Tyson Fury's sloppy. He's very sloppy. Hence why guys like Steve Cunningham and guys like that were able to put him down. Ali got put down, but it's different. Ali wasn't sloppy. Ali was very fast, very firm in his movements. He was very, very sharp. You see, Tyson Fury's got good footwork against the guys that he's fighting. Look how slow Dillian White was. Look how slow White was. Right? Tyson Fury would not get near Ali. Not Ali wouldn't get near him. It's because Ali would be stinging him in and out so fast that Tyson Fury's footwork is good against these heavyweights. Not against someone like Ali, whose foot speed was far greater than Tyson Fury, and his hand speed was far greater than Tyson Fury. And Ali had a great defense. You couldn't catch him. You know, they said in Ali's prime, they used to tie Ali's hands behind his back, and they used to be sparring partners trying to hit him. They couldn't land a glove on him. He was so quick. He was so sharp. Ali was a phenomenon. Like I said, in every single department, you could probably say Ali made top 5. Chin, footwork, hand speed, boxing IQ. He literally made top 5 in every department. Fury doesn't. He doesn't. And knocking out Dillian White or Deontay Wilder was a great win. But let's not forget, Fury had life and death with Deontay Wilder in 2 of those 3 fights. He was put down 4 times in 3 fights. So we need to stop making out like Fury's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. Of this generation, I still think Usyk gives him a lot of problems. Hence why I'm not going to say that they're avoiding him, because they're not. But Steve Cunningham gave Fury a very hard fight. Very hard fight. He had Fury down. Right? Usyk is very skilled, very fast. I actually think he could outbox Tyson Fury. I personally think that that's a fight that needs to happen. But to make out like Tyson Fury would beat Ali was on a different stratosphere to Tyson Fury. He was a different beast of a fighter, a different level of a fighter. Trust me when I say that. He was different class. Ali was ahead of his time. Even when you watch some of Ali's highlights, like when you watch fighters that from 60 years ago, they don't look that good because they look pretty slow. You know, they're fighting in a time where they could only be the best they could be in that particular time. But, you know, human beings were limited 60, 70 years ago because they didn't have the nutrition, you know, they didn't have the training, the training knowledge. They didn't have any of that. Now science has come a long way since then. The bodies are fitter, stronger. But the thing is, Ali even back then looked like he was so ahead of his time. Even when you watch Ali 60 years ago, you watch some of his highlights, he looks phenomenal for even now. You know, you can't compare. It doesn't matter how big Tyson Fury is. We saw Usyk fight Joshua. How big was Joshua compared to Usyk? What happened? Because they weren't on the same skill level. They weren't on the same play. They weren't on the same level. So size only matters when the guy's on the same level as you. Are we really going to say that Tyson Fury is on the same level of Ali? No, he doesn't have the same skill set that Ali had. He doesn't have the things that Ali had. Like I said to you, Ali was probably 10 out of 10 in a lot of departments. He was a phenomenon. And most importantly, Fury's sloppy. For Ali, Fury would have been very slow. Fury's fast for these Fury's fast for Dillian White. But Dillian White's so slow. Let's not forget, cruiserweights like Steve Cunningham gave Fury a lot of trouble, had him down. Yes, Fury's improved since then. And Fury's got great recovery powers as well. He's a bit like Ali, because Ali was like that. Ali, when he went down, he got back up and he had great recovery powers. Ali's never been KO'd. You know, he was stopped against Larry Holmes, but that was a wash, totally finished Ali, you know, towards the back end of his career. And he lost to Larry Holmes, who was one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. You know, so for me, I'm sorry to say, I just don't see how people can draw comparisons with Tyson Fury and Muhammad Ali. I just think it's not even close. I think Ali was on a different stratosphere to Fury. And most importantly, this era makes Fury look much better than what he is, because this era lacks the depth of what the era Muhammad Ali had. When Muhammad Ali was fighting, they were killers back then. There were so many great fighters. You know, Joe Frazier is probably a top 10 heavyweight of all time. George Foreman, the top 10 heavyweight of all time. You know, Ernie Shavers, Ken Norton, Ron Lyle, Larry Holmes. You know, so many great fighters. Sonny Liston. You know, another guy that Ali was supposed to get battered by, but people thought were going to absolutely obliterate him. And he absolutely destroyed Sonny Liston. Twice. Let's not forget beating George Foreman. When George Foreman was a monster, battering everyone, he literally knocked Joe Frazier out with an uppercut that took him off his feet. And Ali came up with a game plan to stay on the ropes, take a lot of punishment to his body, soak it up, tire him, and then take him out. And he took him out. He knocked out George Foreman. George Foreman. Only people in that time realized what George Foreman was around that time. He was an absolute beast, and Muhammad Ali beat him. He beat him when he wasn't even in his prime. Muhammad Ali was past his prime when he fought George Foreman. That's why he couldn't use his legs for 15 rounds, sorry. So he had to come up with that tactic to stay on the ropes, because he knew his legs couldn't move like they once could. He didn't have the stamina that he once had, because Ali was a fighting machine. He had great fitness, great stamina. But unfortunately, Ali didn't have that when he fought George Foreman. So he had to come up with a strategy, a game plan. But look at the mind on the man. And these were against killers. These were against real top tier heavyweight fighters. Not the heavyweights of today, not against Dillian White. No disrespect to Dillian White, but he's no George Foreman. You know, Wilder's no George Foreman. And Wilder had Fury in a lot of trouble. You know, I can't imagine. You see, Wilder was able to land on Fury because Fury, like I said, at times is pretty sloppy. Wilder's also very fast, right? But if you're a ploddy, slow guy, Fury's going to make you look awful. Especially with Dillian White, he's a lot ploddy. He's slow. And Tyson Fury was always going to make him look bad. But Ali's a different game, because Ali's faster than Tyson Fury with his feet. He's got faster hands. And he can match Fury for IQ. He's got even better IQ because he's done it against better fighters. Fury's fighting guys. Look, Fury beat Vladimir Klitschko, who was 40 years of age. Wilder, although a big puncher, right? Not the greatest boxer in the world. He hasn't got the greatest boxing skills, but that is a great win because Wilder's a massive puncher and he's also very fast, right? And that's why he was able to land on Fury. Like, for me, Wilder won't land on Ali. He just wouldn't, because Ali is not sloppy. You see, Fury at times can be sloppy. Ali's not sloppy. He's very quick, very sharp, very cat-like. Fury's fast for his size, but because he's so big, he's not that well coordinated. He's coordinated for his size, but he's not that great coordinated. Normally, big guys aren't. He comes across sloppy at times. Even in this fight against White, at times he can be sloppy, but he uses his size very well. But against Ali, he's different, because Ali would be in and out so quick that Fury would have trouble. And this is why I think Usyk gives him a lot of trouble. But I don't think he's going to fight Usyk. Personally, I think if Usyk, which I think is going to be AJ, I don't think the fight's going to be big enough for him to want to fight him. Even though I think that's a problem. That's not an easy fight for Fury. But I don't think he's going to go anywhere near Usyk. You know, and Eddie Hearn might have been right. They didn't want to fight Usyk off the bat. Personally, what I think should happen is that AJ should probably... See, AJ is not going to do this, but I think what they should do is probably go for the undisputed fight, right? With Fury and Usyk. Allow that. AJ should probably allow that, and then fight the winner of that at the end of the year, or maybe beginning of next year. That's why I think... And AJ should have a fight in the meantime, like an Otto Wallin or someone like that. In my opinion, that's what I think he should do. So these two can fight. Usyk and Fury could fight in the summer. And Joshua fights the winner. Because I think that's the best way for Fury to probably fight on. Look, I have a lot of respect for Fury. I think he's great. What he's come back from is unbelievable. He's great. He's a great fighter. One of my favorite fighters today. But to compare him to Ali, I'm sorry. I just think it's rubbish. I just can't say he's better than Ali. I could never say that. People say, well, you know, we give fighters of the past like godlike status. No. Ali had a resume that stacks up as probably one of the best resumes in boxing history in all divisions. And let's not forget this. Let's also remember this. Ali was the greatest fighter of his generation. Tyson Fury is not I'm talking about Ali was the greatest fighter of his generation in all divisions. There wasn't a fighter better than him in his era. right? Tyson Fury is not the best fighter in his generation. That goes to Canelo. Canelo is the best fighter of this generation. Canelo or Crawford. Like, Tyson Fury is not even in everybody's top 5 pound for pound. He's certainly not number 1 in anyone's pound for pound list. That goes to Canelo. So the point I'm trying to make is, how are we going to say a guy is better than Muhammad Ali or deserves to, when he's not even the greatest fighter of his generation in his division? I mean, in his division he's the greatest fighter, but not when we talk about boxing and we look at who the greatest fighter is right now, it's not Tyson Fury. It's not Tyson Fury. Ali was the greatest fighter of his generation, period. When he was fighting, he was the best guy. It wasn't someone else. But Tyson Fury right now is not the best fighter in the sport of boxing. It's Canelo Alvarez. So how is he better than Ali? And no disrespect to Canelo, people think I'm starting to hate on Canelo. No, Canelo for me is my favorite fighter. But Canelo's no Ali. So how the hell, and Tyson Fury is not as good as Canelo in my opinion, so how is he better than Ali? You know, it's rubbish. Look, resume is everything. Resume is what makes you the great fighter. And Tyson Fury in this generation is great. There's no doubt about it. But you can't compare him to Ali because their resumes are chalk and cheese. Tyson Fury's resume doesn't compare to Ali's resume. Ali's resume is too much in depth and too stacked to be compared to him. Fury just cannot be compared to him. Simple. And I like Fury. I think he's a great fighter. But the fact is, you can't compare him to Ali. I'm sorry. Muhammad Ali is the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's the greatest heavyweight of all time, Muhammad Ali. He's got the best resume, right? He had the best skill set, in my opinion. Was the most exciting fighter to watch, in my opinion. There isn't no heavyweight that matches him. There isn't no heavyweight that comes close. Just because a guy's bigger, what does that mean? Don't mean anything. Fury's footwork is slow compared to Ali's. His hand speed is slow compared to Ali's. The only thing that Fury might have, you know, an advantage in his punch power. And even that, you know, it won't be much in it. But what's punch power when you can't land it? Because Fury's slow. Fury isn't fast. Muhammad Ali's so fast, he's like cat-like reflexes. We're talking about Muhammad Ali in his absolute prime. His reflexes, his hand speed, his foot speed, his movement was on another level. You can't compare. I don't even think Tyson Fury would have beaten Lennox Lewis, let alone Ali. He wouldn't beat Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis would have beaten Tyson Fury, in my opinion. Evander Holyfield would have been a nightmare. Mike Tyson in his prime would have been an absolute animal for Tyson Fury. And I think he would have been all wrong, because Tyson Fury would have had a lot of trouble with Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was very fast and he had a small stature. And we've already seen guys like Steve Cunningham put Tyson Fury down. Mike Tyson was fast, ferocious, quick, punch. He could punch. Tyson Fury isn't going to knock Mike Tyson out. Mike Tyson had a granite chin. You know, when Mike Tyson was past his prime, look at the punishment he took against Lennox Lewis, who's a far bigger puncher, naturally bigger puncher than Tyson Fury. You know, I know they're talking about, well, Tyson Fury's become a massive puncher now. On what basis are we looking at? What basis are we kind of... Look, he's added that to his game. He definitely now can knock people out. But let's not forget, right? Wilder was knocked out more through fatigue. He beat Wilder down. It wasn't a one punch. It was more fatigue. Dillian Whyte was one punch. But Dillian Whyte's been knocked out like that before in much more brutal fashion. AJ knocked him out in much brutal fashion. Povetkin absolutely iced him in much more brutal fashion. Whyte was out cold. So this has been done before to Whyte. So what are we basing Tyson Fury's punch power off? Like, Muhammad Ali knocked out George Foreman. You know, George Foreman at the time was undefeated. Absolute killer of a guy, monster. You know, so you can't compare. You honestly can't compare. Like I said, I don't even think Tyson Fury has a resume anywhere that close to Lennox. And I think Lennox would have beaten Tyson Fury, let alone Muhammad Ali. But that's just my opinion. Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.